Good day, everybody. My name is Lazarus Amukeshe, and today we are back again with another economic update. As always, I'm joined by Eloise du Plessis. Eloise is the head of research at PSG Namibia. Eloise, welcome.
Hi, Lazarus, and a good day to our viewers.
Yes, Eloise, today I want us to talk to the figures that relates to the two most busy months, if I can call it. That's December and January. And for 2020 and 2021, I think it was kind of very difficult. But help us take us through to what really happened to the private sector credit extension over the 2 months.
Yes, maybe before I start with the graphs, let's just quickly talk again about what private sector credit extension is, because it's a very long name for something that's actually very basic. All that means is how many loans were given out to households and businesses during this time. So this is the growth. So it means how many more loans were there in December or January of this year than the year previous. So if we look at the graph of what's happening with private sector credit extension, we can see that it's really been falling off a cliff over the last, since January 2020, really, where it started declining so very much. So we already saw that in November, it was at only 3.1%. So the growth in credit extended was only 3.1%. Then it fell to 2% in December. Now, December and January are kind of different months, right? So December, you're maybe borrowing money to spend a lot on Christmas, to spend on going on holiday, to spend on Christmas gifts. And in January, you're borrowing money again because now you need to pay school fees. Now that your salary in December isn't lasting quite long enough to get you through January. So that's why in January you might be borrowing money. But we haven't seen any of that. So even in December, it fell, the growth fell, and in January, it's the lowest that we've seen it. So there's only been a 1.8% growth in credit in January 2021 compared to January 2020.
Thank you so much, Eloise, for that. But just help us, give us in detail, really what happened in the subsectors, credit extended to businesses, households, and so on.
Yes, so if we look at what happened in December and then what happened in January, if we look at December, there was a decline in the credit that was extended to businesses. So it means that there was a bit of an increase in overdraft lending, but credit extended to businesses actually was negative by 1.2% in December. We did see some growth from households in December. So that ticked higher by 4.5%. And that was mainly because people were buying houses. So it's mostly in mortgage growth. Now, if we look at what happened in January, this actually reversed. So the credit extended to businesses recovered to 1%. So there was a 1% growth. And the Bank of Namibia is attributing this to the increase in overdraft credit for the mining, retail, and manufacturing industries. Now, if we look at what happened to households again, there the growth ticked lower again. So now we were at 4.5% in December, but we're only at 2.5% in January. So we're going to keep seeing this as we move on. So where people were buying more houses in December and taking out loans for it, was less of that happening in January. Now, it could be a situation that January 2020 was a good month for credit, and if you now compare the growth, it means that you're coming off a higher base, so that growth might be a bit lower. But this does mean that we are seeing that that households are lending less and less money. So we're expecting that most of this is due to weaker economic activity.
Okay. Maybe just also give us your outlook. What do you think is going to be happening like throughout the year? In say in 3 months' time, are we going to see a little bit of an uptick, or is it going to remain the same?
Yes, I'm going to whip out my crystal ball now and see what I can prognosticate for the next time, for the next few months. But we know that we've seen interest rates being cut to record lows. There's been payment holidays for borrowers. There's been liquidity relief measures and loan schemes, all to encourage credit extension. But the sharp contraction in the economic growth because of the global COVID-19 response just continues to sap our domestic credit demand. And the very anemic growth that we see in all of these credit extension numbers is a sign that economic activity was stagnant during this month. So in January, very, very little actually happened. Now, we do see that progress is being made with COVID-19 inoculations globally. It's probable that Namibia's coronavirus-related downturn will actually continue into the first half of 2021. Because Namibia trades with other countries, right? So our trade and tourism partners are still emerging from a second wave of COVID-19 infections. I have to say that the numbers are looking very promising in the developed world. The UK has very high vaccination numbers, and we can see the cases coming down significantly. The US also seeing a decline in cases, and there are a lot of states in the US that are actually opening up right now. For Namibia, the government has secured enough vaccine doses through the COVAX facility to inoculate 20% of the population at this stage. And we're expecting it to arrive later this month. And I hope that when most of the world is vaccinated and we see these cases continue to come down, the restrictions will ease and we can see our trade and specifically our tourism make a good return. So that is my outlook. It's very dependent on what happens in the developed world. It's very dependent on what happens in Namibia and whether we can get our tourists back and get our economy going again, and whether there's good policy from government as well to make sure that we have a good recovery.
All right. So Eloise, thank you very much for this breakdown. But I have one quick question. Seeing that credit uptake has been on the low for quite the whole of 2020 and even in January this year, with the NSA yet to release the GDP figures for 2020, how do you kind of reflect that over economic activities within the country last year?
Yes, now we know that when GDP numbers come out, they are the past tense, right?
Yeah.
So when we get our GDP, we're going to be happy or very sad about it, but it's the past. It's what happened.
Yeah.
But I do think that these numbers that we're seeing now with the very low credit uptake, even though rates are at historical lows, I do think that we're going to see a 2020 number that is going to be the worst that we've seen. So we are still expecting a minus 8.1% for the entire 2020 when that number comes out, because growth has just been so sluggish. There hasn't been any pickup, at least from what we can see from the credit numbers, and the tourists haven't really returned either. So we do still expect that 2020 was a very, very bad year, and we will just have to now pick up from there and make sure that we grow well in 2021. We're coming off a low base, so you're probably going to see high numbers for 2021, but we always have to remember it's coming off very low numbers. So we'll have to see when we actually get back to previous levels of GDP.
Yes, and that was Eloise du Plessis, Head of Research at PSG Namibia, bringing us a breakdown of the December 2020 and January 2021 private sector credit extension numbers. Keep watching and do subscribe to the Namibian YouTube channel. Cheers.